It's 7 o'clock. This is Sky News Breakfast. Here are our top stories this morning. Happy New Year. London puts on a smaller than usual celebration to mark the first moments of 2022. And it's a quieter start to the year in the rest of the UK as COVID restrictions crash the party. Alongside the celebrities, the New Year honours are dominated by scientists and volunteers who led the response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Farewell to a peacemaker. The funeral of Archbishop Desmond Tutu takes place in South Africa. Standing room only for the first time in 30 years, some Premier League fans won't have to sit to watch matches. Your weather, it'll be an exceptionally mild start to the new year, but also rather wet and windy at times. And at 2:15, we'll take a look at the papers with the journalist and broadcaster Badisha and the entrepreneur Kate Hardcastle. Hello there, a very good morning and Happy New Year. You've done very well to join us. Now, across the UK, it was a very different start to 2022, depending on where you live. In England, pubs and nightclubs were open for the new year, while in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, COVID restrictions meant for many it was a much quieter night. Despite warnings for people to stay away, thousands turned out for the celebrations in central London, as Katerina Vitozzi now reports.
It's the reliable sound of New Year, and after many more months of COVID uncertainty, Big Ben sounded incredibly comforting. The famous clock, opened again after 4 years of renovations, kicked off a display the London Mayor described as spectacular. But this was a different sort of London show. Planned for TV, the location wasn't made public and officials asked people to stay home. Some, though, did gather around traditional landmarks by the River Thames, hoping to see something. But the big display was further out of the city centre, and many here didn't see much.
It was only we saw this morning it said that the fireworks were back on tonight and they'd allowed it, so you expected the normal New Year's Eve thing, so it was a little bit of a letdown, but it's nice to still be out and be able to do it.
On this part of the River Thames where traditionally the fireworks display is held, there was a brief but beautiful display that offered a tantalising glimpse into what might come in 2022, a New Year's Eve where perhaps things might feel a little bit more like normal.
London's bars, clubs and restaurants were open too. No COVID restrictions here, but still places not as packed as you'd expect for New Year's Eve. It was certainly busier, though, than Edinburgh, where official Hogmanay celebrations were cancelled and big events curtailed. A few lonely pipers couldn't really lift the mood. Welcome. That task left to London. The English capital bringing in 2022. Not back to normal by any means, but still with plenty of sparkle. Katerina Vitozzi, Sky News in London.
While the party was going on in England, it was a more subdued night across the rest of the UK. COVID restrictions meant nightclubs were shut while many pubs decided to close early. But for some, a trip across the border from Wales to England meant the celebrations could take place after all, as Dan Whitehead reports.
At the stroke of midnight, the Welsh capital was all but empty. For a second year in a row, no crowds and no revellers pouring out of nightclubs. They were forced to close yet again. In the bars and pubs that were open, there was little trade, with the rule of sit back and table service only.
I was hoping there'd be more people than what it was, to be fair, for more of an atmosphere. I was hoping to go to clubs, obviously because I just turned 18, but you know, it is what it is, isn't it?
It's not the right atmosphere at all. It's just way too quiet.
As Omicron cases spread, the Welsh Government had taken a tougher approach to New Year celebrations. For some, it made business impossible. The pub in Newport had planned a big glitter ball party, but in the end, they decided to cancel.
With the restrictions, we've decided it's really not fair on the staff to ask customers not to mingle at midnight, because it's understandable people will want to say Happy New Year to their friends, and it's not fair on my staff to be the ones to have to police, but they're not allowed to do that, so we've decided to close.
With New Year plans curtailed, some decided to leave the country in search of a good night. Because as soon as you get to the other side of the Severn crossing in England, there are, of course, fewer restrictions. The nightclubs are all open, and there's no limit to the number of people that you can meet up with. Trains from Swansea, Cardiff and Newport arriving in Bristol were full of Welsh partygoers.
We just sat in a pub and not being able to dance, and who wants to just sit down? And it was table of 6, you can't mix with anyone, I don't know. And I personally don't think it makes much sense that you only have to cross a bridge and the rules are completely different.
Swansea, there's no clubs, pubs open till 12, table of 6. In Bristol, we can do what we want.
While there were some fireworks in Wales, most chose to stay at home, as the First Minister warns of some tough weeks ahead. Dan Whitehead, Sky News, in Cardiff.
So Sky's Milena Veselinovic is in central London for us, where the traditional New Year's Day parade is going to take place a little bit later on today. A very happy New Year to you, Milena. What can we expect?
Happy New Year to you too. Well, this parade has been held in central London since the late 1980s. Normally thousands of people line up along the route. It's very different this year. There's going to be about 600 ticketed spectators right here behind me, contained in this space in central London. But still, organisers promise it's going to be a great show with performers from around the world, with dance troupes, marching bands and musical acts. And it comes after a night of slightly more subdued celebrations, as we've heard, even in England, where there are no restrictions on gatherings. It's still not the New Year's Eve that we've had from the years past. It seems that some people, still cautious, decided to stay at home even though they didn't have to. Now, the message from the government is to go out and enjoy yourself. You can do that, but to be cautious, to be careful, take a lateral flow test if you can get your hands on one, that is. But still here, excitement building up. We can hear the performers rehearsing, so it's all due to kick off at about 1 o'clock this afternoon.
OK, we'll see how things progress throughout the day. Milena, thank you very much for now. And of course, around the world, New Year celebrations have been taking place. Let's have a look at some of the highlights. Just after 5 o'clock this morning, UK time, 2022 began in New York. Restrictions meant fewer people than normal were allowed into Times Square, but 15,000 revellers were there to welcome in the new year. At around 3 a.m. UK time, Brazil saw in the new year with celebrations and fireworks on Copacabana Beach in Rio de Janeiro. Up until last week, the city's mayor had threatened to cancel the main celebrations because of concerns over the spread of COVID-19, but it did go ahead. It was a similar picture elsewhere in Europe as crowds of people flocked to watch the New Year's celebrations in Madrid. However, authorities only allowed 7,000 people into the Puerta del Sol to watch, as opposed to the usual number, around 20,000. Now, this is impressive. 2 Guinness World Records were set by New Year celebrations in the United Arab Emirates. Officials in Ras Al Khaimah organised the highest drone fireworks display ever. The event also saw the most number of drones ever taking part in a single display, with more than 500 flying over the Arabian Gulf. Just wait for it, here it comes. Oh, you've missed it. The drones all said Happy New Year. It's fantastic. We'll show it you a little bit later. Now, doctors and scientists who led the fight against COVID-19 have been rewarded for their work in this morning's New Year's honours. There were also awards for Team GB's successful Olympians and teenage tennis sensation Emma Raducanu, while former Prime Minister Tony Blair is now a Sir. Charlotte Lomas has more on who's made the list, and a warning that her report does contain some flash photography.
3, 2, 1.
There's a distinctive youthful feel to this year's honours list, 11-year-old Tobias Weller, known as the captain in his hometown of Sheffield, raised more than £157,000 during the pandemic. He wanted to help others with cerebral palsy and autism, and says he's chuffed to bits to be the youngest person on record to receive the British Empire Medal.
My mum told me about the honour on Christmas Day, and I thought, whoa, I'm actually going to get an honour from Her Majesty, the Queen. I am so excited.
2021 was also the year science fought back against COVID, and in recognition, the medical chiefs leading the battle have been honoured. Professor Chris Whitty, his deputy Jonathan Van Tam and the Welsh and Scottish counterparts will all receive knighthoods.
It's been such a delight to work with Chris and my colleagues in Northern Ireland, Michael McBride and Gregor Smith, up in Scotland, and it's actually brought us together as chief medical officers across the 4 nations.
In total, 1 in 5 of the New Year's honours are related to COVID, including a knighthood for Sky News' Trevor Phillips. His work with data company Weber Phillips was the first to examine the effect of COVID on different cultural and ethnic groups.
We've brought science, in particular, in my case, data science, to bear in understanding what differences really mean in our society. And we saw last year that COVID really had a differential impact according to who you were, where you came from, where you lived.
COVID also brought testing times to the world of sport in 2021. Under strict conditions, the Tokyo Olympics finally went ahead, with Team GB lifting the spirits of the nation with some outstanding performances. Those who took gold will be honoured by the Queen, including cyclists Laura and Jason Kenny, who will receive a Dame and Knighthood. They're thought to be the first married couple to be honoured at the same time. And teenage tennis sensation Emma Raducanu ends the year with another title to her growing collection after being given an MBE. Other famous British faces awarded include actress Joanna Lumley, who'll be made a Dame. And after his final outing as James Bond, Daniel Craig has been made a Companion of the Order of St Michael and St George, a special diplomatic honour also given to his fictional character 007. In what has been a challenging year, the New Year's Honours List recognises all those who've entertained and inspired and led the way in uncertain times. Charlotte Lomas, Sky News.
Also making the news this morning, at least 500 homes are thought to have been destroyed by large wildfires in Colorado. Tens of thousands of people have been forced to flee after fires were driven by winds of more than 100 miles an hour. At least 7 people are thought to have been injured. The Archbishop of Canterbury has used his New Year message to call for a renewed fight against climate change. Justin Welby said world leaders must do more to protect the planet.
Hundreds of millions of people are already suffering the impacts of our rapidly warming planet. Extreme weather, droughts and famines and conflicts intensified by competition over natural resources.
At least 12 people have been killed in a stampede at a shrine in Kashmir. Reports say 13 others were injured during the incident at the Hindu shrine near Jammu city.
I thought I heard a strange noise.
What kind of strange noise?
Like someone walking slowly up creaking stairs.
We don't have stairs.
I know! How strange is that?
Oh, she was just so funny, wasn't she? And President Biden has led the tributes to the actress and Golden Girls star Betty White, who's died at the age of 99. Hollywood star Ryan Reynolds simply said the world looks very different now. The funeral of Archbishop Desmond Tutu is taking place in South Africa this morning. We can take you to Cape Town now. COVID restrictions mean just 100 people are expected to attend the service at St George's Cathedral in Cape Town. The Archbishop, a Nobel Peace Prize winner who helped end apartheid in South Africa, died on Sunday. He was 90 years old. And of course, we'll bring you that funeral as it begins at around 8 o'clock this morning. Let's take a look now at the weather.
Look forward to brighter skies. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Although the new year will start off exceptionally mild, things are set to turn much colder from Monday as the winds swing round to a northerly direction. For now, though, it's mostly mild and dry across Britain as overnight rain clears from northern Scotland. However, it will be windy in the west as a band of rain moves across Ireland and Northern Ireland. This narrow band of rain will quickly move eastwards through today with bright or sunny skies either side. It stays mild and rather windy for most, with severe gales in the far northwest. Blustery showers will develop in western Scotland, Northern Ireland and the Republic. These will push further east during the afternoon and could be heavy at times. It remains mild but rather windy tonight, especially in the blustery far northwest. There will be further bands of showers overnight, some on the heavy side. Sunday will bring a mix of sunny spells and blustery showers, which may cluster into longer spells of rain.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Now, despite his global reputation, just 100 people are expected to attend the funeral of Archbishop Desmond Tutu in South Africa this morning. COVID restrictions combined with his own wishes mean it'll be a very simple service. Well, Glenda Wheelskit, former Truth and Reconciliation Commissioner with Archbishop Tutu, joins us now from Cape Town, and we're just watching live pictures from the cathedral as mourners take their seats. Thank you very much for joining us. So a simple service, but rather fitting, because the Archbishop said he didn't want a fuss or anything too lavish.
Good morning, yes, and Happy New Year to you. Yes, it is a very simple ceremony. Even the days leading up to the funeral today, he lay in state in a very simple coffin with just a small bunch of flowers on the coffin. And that was his wish, that he would be buried very simply, that the ceremony would be very simple with, of course, a religious tone, and surrounded by those who love him as they lay him to rest.
Yes, he even said he wanted the cheapest coffin possible,
Yes,
didn't
yes.
he? It's going to be a very sad day, of course, for you, but also the chance to reflect on his remarkable life. How will you be remembering him as that funeral gets underway?
Oh, I remember him very fondly for his deep, deep sense of integrity, his deep sense of faith, believing that all of us, as his personal philosophy of Ubuntu, all of us are made in the image of God. All of us are important to each other as we are interconnected and we are dependent on each other. And this philosophy was evident in everything that he did. He honored everyone, the little people, as he calls them, and those who had status and standing in communities. So
We're
I'll
looking-
really
Sorry,
remember
do
him.
carry on, yes.
I'll really remember him for that, and the absolute wonderful leadership that he portrayed during the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. He showed us what true servant leadership is all about. He also showed us how to be compassionate and to deal with those who had come to the commission to tell their stories under difficult and very bravely coming to speak about their experience of the apartheid past.
We've been looking at some pictures of him, and he was this extraordinary communicator, wasn't he? He had that infectious laugh as well, but also he wasn't afraid to pull punches when needed.
Absolutely. He was critical wherever he experienced or saw injustice and spoke out about injustice and untruths and lies and deceit wherever he found it, both to the past government of apartheid government and also to the present government, where he experienced issues of corruption and wrongdoing. He spoke out. And so he is a global icon for peace and justice and reconciliation.
Yeah, he was certainly very critical, wasn't he, of the current political situation and that corruption, as you say. How do you think he'll be, his work will carry on in South Africa?
When we interacted him before, he always said that he's not going to be here forever and that we should be taking up the baton that he will one day leave behind. And I think that although it does seem many times that there is not strong leadership in our country at the present moment, we do also believe that there will be those brave young men and women who will take up the cudgels and take up the baton and move forward and speak out against injustice.
Well, Glenda Wheelskit, we are very grateful for your time today, former Truth and Reconciliation Commissioner with Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Thank you for joining us, and a happy New Year on what is a very sad day. And talking about the current leadership, President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to deliver the main eulogy at that service in St George's Chapel in Cape Town a little bit later. As you can see, mourners just gathering in the cathedral now. Desmond Tutu's body has been lying in state in the cathedral for the last few days. We'll bring that to you, of course, when it starts. You're watching Sky News Breakfast. Coming up, there won't be the usual crowds, but the boss of London's New Year Parade joins us to look ahead to this year's event. If you're just joining us, a very good morning. Happy New Year. It is 7:34 and you're watching Sky News Breakfast. Now, a different looking annual New Year parade takes place in London a bit later on today. Concerns about COVID mean far fewer spectators will be allowed, but organisers are still promising a world-class event. Let's speak to the Executive Director of the parade, Bob Bone. Morning, Bob. A very happy New Year to you. So tell us, what can we expect?
Well, first of all, good morning, Jonathan. Happy New Year to you as well. What can we expect? Well, as you said, it's a very, very different sort of event this year because normally we're 10,000 participants on the streets of the West End with around about 600,000 live audience filling the streets to watch it. Well, we can't do that this year for obvious reasons, but we have planned something that's going to be pretty good. We're really a TV show this year with a live audience, and we're going to be in Waterloo Place at 1 o'clock. This afternoon. The audience is all ticketed, incidentally, completely sold out, has been for quite a while. So don't anybody try and come into it. But do watch it on TV. It goes out, as I say, at 1 o'clock. It's on London Live. It's also on Live Now streaming service, which can be accessed through our website, lmydp.com. We've got loads of the usual participants in our arena-based show this year. Marching bands, samba dancers, people from Carnaval del Pueblo, all the Latin American countries represented. Then we've taken the advantage that we have this year of having an arena-based static show, building a stage as well into our arena so that we can bring in some very, very talented performers, singers and dancers and so on. So, for example, we've got a voice winner, Molly Hocking, appearing. We've got West End star Marisha Wallace appearing. And we've got indie chart topper Michael Armstrong on our stage today, along with the host of the usual things that you expect to see in London's New Year's Day parade. So we're pretty sure it's going to be a very, very exciting and we hope successful event.
Yeah, let's hope so. And the weather should be on your side as well. Pretty mild, isn't it, for this time of year?
Amazingly so, yes. I was wondering whether to get the thermals out today or not, as usual, and I've pretty much decided not to, actually. I think we're going to be looking at around about 14 or 15 degrees throughout most of the day. And best of all, it looks like it might not rain, so that's fantastic for us.
Yeah, that's key, isn't it? Of course. Tell us a bit about the history of this event then, Bob.
Well, we've been going now. This will be our 36th event on New Year's Day. I was going to say parade then. It's not quite a parade this year. But 36th one, we started on the 1st of January 1987, and we've grown exponentially every single year right up to 2020, when, as I say, we peaked with a street audience of about 650,000 and 10,000 performers on the streets. 22 countries around the world represented, as well as always one of our key things was getting representation from all of London boroughs in our London Borough competition. So we invited every year London boroughs to put a float in, and they were competing for charity prizes. And over the years, we've contributed the best part of £2 million to local London charities through the event. So there's that strand of the event. Plus, of course, there's the other strand, which is we've introduced London and Great Britain and many parts of the world to the wonders of American marching bands, which we never used to see much of here before. And we regularly bring in around about 20 marching bands from the States every year. Not this year, of course, because travel regulations don't make that possible. But we have got contributions from our American friends that we went out and we made little film packages of them giving their performances in the States, which we're going to play out through our TV show and on big screens to our live audience.
Sounds good. I'll tell you what, Bob, you're full of beans this morning. Am I taking it that you had an early night last night?
Yeah, very, very early night. Whether that's to do with age or just the fact that I knew what was coming up today, I'm not sure. But yeah, I feel full of beans right now. I hope I will at 1 o'clock and even more so at 3:30 when we finish.
Yeah, excellent. All right, well, I hope it all goes well. We appreciate your time today. Bob Bone, Executive Director, London's New Year's Day Parade. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Now, for the first time in almost 3 decades, fans will be allowed to stand while watching some Premier League games. Several clubs have introduced so-called rail seating, which has been approved by safety experts. All-seater stadiums were introduced, of course, after the Hillsborough tragedy in which 97 Liverpool fans were killed. Our sports correspondent Tom Parminter reports.
It's just an instinct for so many football fans to get up on your feet and support your team. While they should be sat down, standing will now be permitted at selected Premier League grounds. Of course, COVID has played havoc with the festive fixtures, but the new rails are in and ready for their debut.
Chelsea have put over 12,000 of these safe standing spaces in, and it is completely different to how people used to stand here in the Shed End at Stamford Bridge back in the old days. You now have one designated spot. You're being monitored very closely, and it's proven to have worked elsewhere.
It's long been part of German football to great effect. And at Glasgow Celtic, it's worked successfully for the past 5 years.
It's all starting to go off, flags are out, songs are going, drums are going.
Liverpool fan Gareth Roberts was unsure until he tried it for himself.
You are standing up, but you've got your space. You can't fall backwards, you can't fall forwards. There's no domino effect. And straight away I felt much safer, because I think one of the problems with all of this is that there's been unsafe standing at football for years. At Anfield, at all Premier League grounds, it's gone on, particularly in away sections. It's just you gravitate towards standing.
Rightly, the disaster at Hillsborough in 1989, in which 97 Liverpool fans were killed, made football take a long, hard look at how supporters were treated. Now, nearly 3 decades after all-seater stadiums were introduced, some experts believe standing can actually make things safer.
What we can't have is another disaster happening, and the risks arising from people persistently standing in seated areas that aren't designed for those people to stand is a real one.
The police say it can make identifying troublemakers harder, and clubs have to keep fans in their designated standing spaces.
We need to monitor it, we need to see the impacts, we need to be evidence-led on it, and if there are issues, then there'll have to be some brave decisions about what actually is the best thing for safety and security.
Chelsea are confident it will work, and it's in too at Manchester City, Cardiff City, Manchester United and Tottenham Hotspur. They now just need some games to play. Tom Parminter, Sky News, Stamford Bridge.
Now, from this morning, the way we buy house and car insurance should change significantly. Companies now have to offer the same price to new as well as existing customers. And I'm joined now by the co-founder and chief executive of insurance firm Urban Jungle, Jimmy Williams. Happy New Year to you, Jimmy. I'm not sure how many people are waking up this morning thinking about insurance, but maybe they should be.
Yes, maybe they should be. Thanks very much for having me on, and Happy New Year to you too. Yes, this is the biggest shake-up of the home and motor insurance world that anyone can remember. And what's happening, just sort of in a nutshell, is that insurance companies from this morning, from today, won't be able to charge you more just for being a loyal customer. They'll have to charge you the same as a new customer. And that is a really big shake-up in terms of the way all the pricing is going to work.
Is it a penalty, though, for current customers just to stay as they are, and for new customers, or is it new customers getting a good offer when they sign up?
So historically, I guess that's the way it's been justified by a lot of these big insurers, is that it is an offer for signing up, and that's kind of normal across lots of industries. I guess what's unusual is just how big those offers are. So in home insurance, for example, there's about a 70% discount for year one customers, which is obviously massive. And what it means is that in order to keep getting a good deal year after year, you have to switch. You have to keep switching around. You have to phone up your insurer every year and say, hey, can I have the best deal? It's a massive pain. And then if you've been a customer perhaps for longer than 2 or 3 years, that means you're way off the best deal that you could be having. And you're getting really ripped off. So, what this should mean for different types of customers, if perhaps you've been with an insurance company for 4 or 5 years, happy days, great news today. What it should mean is that your price will just automatically go down the next time you get your renewal notice. Fantastic. If you're a newer customer and you switched in the last year or two, it's likely you'll see your price go up, and you might need to get hunting around for a better deal.
What other practices need tightening up in 2022?
Yeah, so from our point of view, we're a challenger in the space, and we stood against price walking all along and never done it ourselves. So our prices will be remaining the same from today. But we've really called on the FCA to go further than this. There's lots of things in the industry that we'd like to see change. So, for example, there's still very, very high fees out there for people to pay monthly. So typically you'd have to take out a loan with premium finance, which means you pay a lot extra, maybe sometimes 30 or 40% APR to pay monthly, which is obviously huge. There are still massive cancellation fees. There's still pricing practices that we don't approve of, like pricing people just because of the kind of job they have or what age they are. So we think there's lots more to go in terms of making the insurance industry fairer, and we're trying to lead the way on that.
All right, good advice. Jimmy Williams from Urban Jungle, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks very much for the time.
Could be a New Year's resolution, couldn't it? Checking out all your home and car insurance deals, see if you can do a bit better. Still to come here on Sky News Breakfast, we're going to take a look at the first papers of 2022 with journalist and broadcaster Vidisha and also the entrepreneur Kate Hardcastle will join us for that in a couple of minutes. If you're just joining us, a very happy new year to you. Time to review the first papers of 2022, and I'm joined by the journalist and broadcaster Vidisha and the entrepreneur Kate Hardcastle. Nice to see you both again. I hope you're having lots of strong coffee. You're doing very well so far, looking wide awake. Thank you. Vidisha, we're in a new year, but of course COVID still hangs over us, doesn't it? And the Sun reporting today, actually some good news really to kick things off. The third jab, the booster, cuts the risk of getting into hospital by 88%.
Yes, this is very good news, but it's the front runner for some medium news and some bad news. So the result of a very big study over the last year and a half shows that compared to those who have had no jabs whatsoever, getting your 2 jabs plus your booster puts you at 88% of protection and makes sure pretty much that hospitalization, really dying from this new Omicron variant, are very, very unlikely compared to whether you were unjabbed or not. The medium news is that some vaccination and booster centres are reporting that they're 2/3 empty. So people have been very good about getting their first 2 jabs. And then even though the big booster rollout has been generally successful, in some areas, there's a 40% lack of uptake. So people are getting that reminder text on their phone, and they're feeling that because they are already protected, they can maybe delay getting the booster for a little while. Don't do that. Go right ahead because, and here's the bad news, the British Medical Association have pointed out that 12,400 people are currently in hospital with COVID, that staff shortages and increasing hospitalizations, which are going up 73% on Christmas week, are going to hobble the NHS we love so much, unless we are all careful and unless the BMA strongly hints the government brings in further curbs or restrictions, or at least just steps up to the plate and acknowledges that our sense of complacency around Omicron being less severe than Delta, our sense of complacency around booster jabs and jab number 3 are not backed up by the statistics. So there's a full range of Omicron and COVID news. The great thing is we're not in the same position that we were in 18 months ago. We've got the vaccines, we've got the boosters, we're seeing levels of protection ticking up as long as everyone continues to follow all of those additional rules as well.
We're just going to break into the papers. Thank you for that, Vidisha. We'll come back in a moment. I just want to take you straight to Cape Town, St George's Cathedral. The funeral of Archbishop Desmond Tutu is beginning. As you can see, mourners all gathered there in the cathedral where he preached so often, a building that was pivotal in the anti-apartheid movement. The clergy there taking their place as they prepare for that funeral service to get underway. We will, of course, keep across that for you throughout the morning. Kate, lots of people making their New Year's resolutions today. Plenty of people will be thinking, I need to do more exercise, I want to start getting fit. But if you're into swimming, I'm into swimming, it's a problem sometimes getting to a decent local pool.
That's right, a stark warning from Swim England today, suggesting that by the end of the decade, we may lose 2,000, up to 2,000 swimming facilities across the UK. And they say that's down to a lack of investment. Now, a lot of these fitness facilities had to close down during COVID. Many of them didn't receive adequate funding. Many of them are legacy pools and haven't had the investment over recent years. But we know, as well as being a life-saving lesson to learn, that it's actually a really brilliant sport, very community-based, allows a lot of people a social activity that's affordable and multi-generational, across the generations. So I think we need to heed this warning. We need to make sure that any element of sport isn't regionalised or unable to be partaken by any generation, any demographic. So I think we need to listen and take the warning. We're remembering we're getting the New Year's honours list here today. We're listening to it. We're hearing about people like Hannah Russell, Bethany Firth, who were our Paralympic swimmers who've received the OBE. Of course, Tom Daly, Adam Peaty, who've been receiving the OBE today. And, their legacies, I'm sure they would admit, wouldn't be the same if it wasn't for those pools, those fitness facilities at the very start of their careers that enabled them.
Yeah, well said. We haven't got long, so I just want to get through another couple of stories quite quickly, Vidisha, if that's all right. And I'm afraid it's a rather grim story that you found for us in The Independent, this stabbing that sees London hit a grim record for teen killings.
Yeah, so the record for teen killings over the last year has now hit 30 because a 16-year-old boy was killed in Hillingdon just last week. An hour before that, a teenage boy was killed in Croydon. I just wanted to point out there's a very nice comment from the Met Police's commander who says that these tragedies, they're not numbers, they're not statistics. These are individuals who had lives and families. And so each incident is not just a headline to be hashed and rehashed by people who are going to say that London's unsafe or make stereotypes and the kinds of people who are affected by knife crime or gang culture or all the rest of it. It's really a tragedy for absolutely everyone. There is no particular demographic. It's what happens when people fall down through the cracks in society and grow up in areas where there isn't investment in schooling, sports, community services. So yes, it's a grim record. I don't want these teen killings to continue.
Yeah, you make a very good point there. And Kate, let's have a look at the Sun. Golden Girls, Betty, she's died at the age of 99, famously played Rose, of course.
Just 2 weeks off her 100th birthday, and the outpourings today of tributes to this wonderful actress, very talented actress, has been fantastic. Also to realise just how much she played a part in the social side and using her platform. She had her own TV show at a very early age and gave the opportunity to a black dancer called Arthur Duncan, who completely suggests that it was down to Betty pushing him forward, giving him that platform on national television that helped him in his career and so many others. I will say two things only. First and foremost, what we hear today is that Betty White feels that she received the accolades in her time. It's not someone that we're doing posthumously. We are actually we're acknowledging someone who actually heard the praise, which is so, so important. And number two, just if you haven't watched the comedy, rewatch it. She was the master, the mistress of wit.
She really was. We've been playing some clips this morning. Kate, Badisha, thank you both very much. Great to see you. We'll speak again in half an hour.